Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is my wrap-up for February. Now this wrap-up is going to be a little bit different from usual, and that is because this one is going to be unscripted. I mentioned this in my previous video, but I had written out the most beautiful, really long script for this video, like I always do. I always write out all of my reviews words for word and then just read it out for the video. But then my computer crashed, I hadn't saved the file, and I lost the entire script. That's really annoying, and I was planning to rewrite it, but every time I opened up a Word document to rewrite the script that I had already written, I was just getting so annoyed that I decided to just do it slightly differently this time and record this without a script. This is going to be an exception. My wrap-ups are always scripted, mostly because I think that thinking about a review ahead of time and writing it out makes it easier for me to get my thoughts across on a book. Also because once I have a script, it's really easy to include closed captions in the video, which is one of my goals for this year in terms of BookTube. But not today. I cannot bear the anger anymore of looking at this empty page where there used to be a beautiful script, so now I'm just winging it. But technically this wrap-up video should be like all of the others, so you'll find timestamps down below, you'll find links to the booktubers that I'm shouting out down below, and you'll find links to the books down below. Now those links are affiliate links to Amazon, so if you go click on them and you buy one of the books mentioned or anything else, then I will get a small commission from it. Just so you're aware, it doesn't actually change the price for you. Just wanted this to be as transparent as possible. Let's get into the shoutouts then. So every month I shout out 3 small booktubers that I've particularly been enjoying lately. The first shoutout goes to A Musical Bookworm. This channel is run by Victoria, who, as the name suggests, likes both books and music. I believe she is a music teacher in her day-to-day life, and her reading is very, very varied. I tried to figure out if she has one genre that she clearly reads more than any other, but it's a really balanced mix of, say, historical fiction, contemporaries, classics, across all age grades as well. So if you're after someone who has a really diverse taste in books, then definitely check out Victoria's channel. The second shout out goes to Made with Books, and this is run by Madeleine, who is a fellow German booktuber. Always enjoy coming across those. And unlike Victoria, Madeleine's reading tastes are very similar to mine. So she mostly enjoys classics and adult contemporaries, which is what I mainly read as well. If you want to really get to know her reading taste, I would recommend checking out her recent top 10 books tag that she did. And finally, I want to recommend Annalisa Eli, or Eli. I genuinely don't know how to pronounce that second name. Sorry, Annalisa. She reads books that are completely different to what I read, and that is mainly fantasy, but I love her channel particularly for her discussion videos. She's done some fantastic discussion videos recently about gender in books, which, as you all know, is a topic close to my heart, and she also does art videos, and as someone who's completely untalented in the visual fields, I enjoy watching other people do art. Arts and books and feminism, if you like those things, go check her out. Let's get to the books then. In February I read 4 books with an average rating of 3.5 stars. The very first book I finished was on audiobook, and that was Educated by Tara Westover. And as usual, I got to the hype way late. This was really big last summer when it came out, but I'm reading it almost a year late. And it is a memoir. Now, memoirs are a genre that I don't generally read, and maybe that's why I had some difficulties with this book. This is the story of the author, obviously being a memoir, who grew up in rural Idaho in a family of fundamentalist government skeptics. She was technically homeschooled, but her father was very against education in general, so she didn't really learn much and spent most of her childhood working in her father's scrapyard. Her childhood was pretty traumatic. She had a very abusive brother as well as an abusive father, and the book basically details her life from childhood to adulthood, where she somehow, despite her lack of formal education, manages to get a PhD from Cambridge University. The story in itself was pretty interesting. It's always really fascinating to read about someone whose life was so different from your own. But maybe that was partly why I wasn't super in love with the book. Sometimes it read like fiction, and I don't mean that I don't believe what happens. This is not about the content. We know that people grow up in abusive families and then go on to accomplish incredible things. So I'm not doubting the content of the book, but the way that it was written, it read more like a novel than like a non-fiction book. And I like my non-fiction to read it like non-fiction and not like a fairy tale. There were too many bits of descriptions of people's facial expressions or the colours of the landscape, and that was just a little too much for me. Like I said, I don't usually read memoirs, so maybe that's just a feature of the genre. Please let me know, are all memoirs written like that? But despite the issues that I had with the style, really this was a good read. It was an incredibly interesting book about a truly amazing woman and her achievements, and I gave it 3 stars. I would recommend that you read it if the subject matter sounds interesting to you. It certainly did to me. The next book I finished was The Rule of 4 by Ian Caldwell and Dustin Thomason. This is one of the books that I bought on your recommendation when I asked for books that had a PhD student as the main character. I found this in a charity shop just a few days after that video and just went for it. There was one thing that I found quite off-putting about the book before I actually read it, and that was one of the blurbs on the back from The Independent, which reads, "The Da Vinci Code for people with brains." Yes, listen, you don't have to market your book by putting another book down. I've not read the Da Vinci Code, so I'm not even going to try and compare the intellectual properties of both. But by saying that this is like the Da Vinci Code for people with brains, you're saying that the Da Vinci Code is for people without brains, and that is not okay. Do not market your book like that. But let's get to the actual novel. So this follows a undergraduate student at Princeton named Tom Sullivan, who is researching an old document called, and I am going to pronounce this wrong, the Hypnerotomachia Polyphyli, which is a real-life document. So this is a real historical document from the Italian Renaissance. And the main character, Tom, is trying to crack the code within it with his flatmate, Paul. And Tom has a bit of a family history with this document because his father was also a researcher looking into that. And then, because that's the sort of book it is, there is murders, there's mysteries, there's a race against time, and there's big treasures to be discovered. I liked the university setting of this book. That's exactly what I was after. I liked the aspect on research and on riddle solving. That was quite fun, even though I personally did not crack any of the riddles, but I didn't read it expecting to crack any of the riddles. And I liked the main character and his flatmates. There's Paul, there's Charlie and Gil, and they were like this foursome of men who all kind of showed different aspects of academic achievements, I guess. The thing I didn't like about this book, and I'm getting so fed up of talking about this, honestly. The thing I didn't like about this book was the complete lack of female characters in it. There's exactly one female character who one would consider a character, and that is the protagonist's girlfriend, Katie, who is lovely and angelic, but in a sexy way, and she keeps him grounded, and she reminds him that there's more to life than academic accolades. Yeah, it just makes me want to vomit. You know the archetype. It just seems incredible that these two men have written a book that completely ignores the fact that women exist at universities as well. Because this does not have a small host of characters. There's plenty of students and adult researchers, lecturers, and people in the art world. All the sort of people who would be interested in an old Italian Renaissance document. None of them are female. Excuse me, but we do exist in universities. And the thing is, the authors could have used that to make a point about the lack of diversity in academia. But they didn't. They just seem to have completely forgotten that women actually exist. And that put a big damper on what could have been a really fun, thrilling adventure story with a slightly nerdy twist. So I still enjoyed reading the book. I gave it 3 stars, but unless you're interested in this particular story, then go and find a thriller that does not just completely ignore the fact that women exist. The third book that I read in February, and this took me the longest amount of time to read, was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is another one that I picked out because all of my favourite booktubers list this as one of their favourites, usually one of their childhood favourites. Last year I read A Little Princess, also by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I absolutely loved that. I talked about it in a video I did about boarding school novels, which I will link up here, and you should definitely check out. I'm really quite proud of that video, even though it's an early one. This book, however, is not set at a boarding school. This is the story of 10-year-old Mary, who grows up in colonial India with a very rich family, but then one day her entire family dies of the cholera, and she is sent to live with her equally rich but reclusive uncle in Yorkshire on his country estate. Now, Mary is a very bored and unfriendly child who doesn't take much interest in the world around her or in herself. But of course, as these kinds of stories tend to go, once she is in Yorkshire, she goes through this transformation of character. And this transformation is sparked by her discovery of a secret garden, a walled garden that has not been entered in 10 years. So she makes friends with one of the local farm boys called Dickon. I'm sure there are better nicknames for Richard. And she also makes friends with the sickly son of the house, who's called Colin. And together they try and crack this mystery, they try and explore the garden. This was a gorgeous book, and I'm glad that I picked this up based on everyone's recommendations because it was beautiful. And the reason why it took me so long to read is because the style is so gorgeous. I didn't want to read it too quickly. I wanted to savor it. Frances Hodgson Burnett really has a way with words, and her style is just the right mix of fairy tale-like and realistic. It is flowery and descriptive when it needs to be, and then funny when it needs to be, and then realistic when it needs to be. Gorgeous story. I think in comparison with A Little Princess, I slightly prefer A Little Princess, entirely because of the boarding school setting. But I have to say that the whole gardening aspect of this is something that I haven't read in a book before. And of course we get a lot of biblical connotations from it, with the Garden of Eden and things like that. But as someone who can even make a pot of catgrass die, as evidenced in the background of this video, I still enjoyed the nature and gardening aspects of this so much. Loved it. 4 stars. By the time I'd finished with The Secret Garden, the month was almost over, so the last book I picked up was one that I knew I would finish in 2 days, and that's Holes by Sachar. And this one I first read in secondary school, like many of you probably did as well. And I haven't picked it up since I was 13 or 14 or whenever we read it in school. So that was very interesting to reread because I partly remembered the story and partly didn't. Now this is about 14-year-old Stanley who ends up in a sort of youth detention boot camp in the middle of the Texan desert for stealing a pair of trainers, although he insists that he didn't steal those trainers, that they just happened to fall from the sky on top of him. While there, he has to dig holes every day, all day. And even though the guards of the camp tell him and the other boys that they're digging holes because it's character building, Stanley has the suspicion that they're actually looking for something. Now he makes friends with a boy named Zero, who's very quiet, very silent. Everyone thinks he's really stupid, but Stanley knows that there is more to Zero than first meets the eye. Now, as well as the story of Stanley and Zero, we also get some backstory into the past, both in 19th century Europe and then 19th century America. And this tiny little book ties so many storylines together. I don't even know how to summarize it in a way that makes any sense. This is a fantastic book. The writing style is so... I think this is what I would call a modern fairy tale, because on the one hand, it reads like something that doesn't actually happen, you know, from the fact that the main character's name is Stanley Yelnats, which is spelled the same backwards and forwards, to the whole backstory that draws so many different characters together in a very weird, coincidental way. So there are aspects of this that are completely over the top, fairy tale like no way is this real life. But then it also draws from really important issues of the 20th century when this book was published. There's questions of race and of criminality, the legal system is questioned, privilege. There's so much real stuff in there, woven into the weird fairy tale-like aspects. It just makes for a fantastic read. If you've read it in school, reread it. If you haven't read it yet, read it. 4 stars from me as well. Wonderful book. So overall, my February started a bit weak and ended very strong. And I'm looking forward to see what March brings. I mentioned in my previous video I'm going to be away in Germany. In fact, by the time you're watching this video, I'm already in Germany, and I probably won't get that much reading done then. So what do I usually do at the end of my wrap-ups? Yes, curated bookshelf project. So I read 3 paperbacks this month and 1 audiobook. This book I'm not going to reread, so I will give it away. These 2 books I definitely will want to reread one day, and I'm going to place them on my bookshelf downstairs. Finally, we get to my non-book favourites of the month. And this month I actually did something that I've been meaning to do for ages, and that is get myself more than 1 pair of glasses. Now, I wear prescription glasses, though it's not a very strong prescription, but I do need my glasses to see, and I do what everyone else does, and I go to Specsavers and I spend £150 on a pair of glasses and a pair of sunglasses. But I've always wanted to try those really cheap prescription glasses that you can get online. So finally I had a bit of extra cash and I spent £50 on 4 pairs of glasses. This is one of them. This pair of clear glasses, actually with anti-scratch and anti-glare coating, only cost me a tenner, and they were all around that price. Let me show you the other ones as well. Oh, I think I left one of them in the bedroom. Got it. So this first pair is clear matte plastic, and I've always wanted some clear glasses. I mean, I say always, you know, always as in since 2016 when they suddenly became popular. The second pair that I really like is this one. And these are browline glasses, so they've got a tortoise shell top here and then just a thin frame around the bottom. Really like these. Again, just a tenner, and that's including the coating. The other 2 pairs I'm not too in love with because they're absolutely gigantic for my face. They're really huge. So we've got a pair of gold wire frames, and I really like the look of them, but I do think they're a bit too big for my face. Whatever, I'm still going to be rocking that Harry Potter look if I want to. And then lastly, we've got a pair of matte tortoise shell. The shape of these is probably the closest to my other pair that I had before. But again, they're just a little bit too big. I've got them now, so I'm still going to wear them. And I like having the options of wearing different glasses. Like, never done that before. I've always just had the 1 pair of glasses. But now I can play around with some funky looking glasses if I want. And that makes me happy. So the website that I used, I'm going to link it down below. This is not sponsored in any way. I didn't get the glasses for free, although if you want to send me free glasses, hit me up. I paid for all of these. In total, I paid £54 for 4 pairs of glasses shipped, and that's pretty amazing. I would only recommend this if your prescription isn't too strong, because if you have got quite a strong prescription, then you probably want an expert actually fitting the glasses and making sure that they are good for you. But the website, which is called Goggles for You, I will link down below if you're interested. Right, that was it for today. I have no idea if this wrap-up is actually going to be longer or shorter than my usual scripted ones, but don't worry, next month we will go back to the full script. Thank you for watching. Bye!